Sometimes life lets you down and you feel that you are done. You just want a morning run because the fun is all gone. But sometimes life makes you proud when you look far and wide, when you leave the pain behind and see the brighter side. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you. Sometimes life makes you blind and you choose something bad. You just wanna cry and hide and save your face from the crowd. But sometimes life makes you see the beauty in you and me. When you look up above, there is God and there is love. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new. We're here to help you see the newness of life. We're here to help you feel your hope is so real. You got the power to see. We'll help you see the new you. TNC gives you inspiration. TNC reignites your passion. TNC starts your transformation. TNC helps you see the new you.
The new channel. The new channel. The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following show are those of the hosts, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to TNC. We are here to help you see the new you. My name is Jennifer Nuya, live streaming from Bacoor, Cavite, and you're watching the world premiere of Stories from the Fringe. We are still We're so glad that you've decided to join us today. I'll be introducing our guests in a moment. Let me know that you can hear me by typing in the chat box or comment section where you are joining us from today. And in order to make the most of our time together, we encourage you to remove all distractions and prepare to take notes, mental awareness, so that you can stay fully engaged and focused on our guest today. And also, we encourage you to drop in any comments, any questions, or anything that you would like to share in the chat box so we would know that you are fully engaged with us. I'm happy to have on the show today Janet Yung, the founder and Chief Learning Officer of Trilogy People Performance Consultancy, and 8 Treasures. We have known each other for quite a while. Janet, I'm happy you're here.
Hello, Jennifer. Thank you for
Hi.
inviting me. Thank
So
you for
how
inviting
have
me
you
for this
been?
interview.
How have you been
Sorry.
since the last time we chatted, Janet?
It's been good. I think with COVID-19, it forced us to do things in many different ways. So I think it's been a year where I grew a lot myself, whether is
Mm-hmm.
it from a business or personal side.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wonderful, wonderful. So, may you please share to our viewers a brief background of yourself and also your work in Trilogy, People Performance Consultancy, and 8 Treasures.
Sure, Jennifer. Basically, I started off in the corporate, working in the medical sales side of it, which is Johnson& and Johnson, for more than a decade. That's 12 years, starting from a sales rep, working all the way to a divisional director or franchise owner. Before I quit my job, mainly because I could not really balance my life after giving birth to my son, and at the same time having to travel 75% of my time and working 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So I think at that
Wow.
period of time, it caused a lot of emotional unbalance. So I decided to decided to tell my boss I'll take a 2 years hiatus and break before I go back to corporate. But in the process, I think I wanted to understand why I was emotionally not that great. So I went into Chinese metaphysics just to explore and understand a bit more. And the next thing I knew is I've been in it for the last 16 years. And in
Wow.
between, I basically wrote a series of books called Being Happy and Successful. I think it was triggered by my ex-Johnson & Johnson colleagues because they found that the system from a Chinese metaphysics perspective versus that of the Western profiling systems like MBTI, DISC are pretty similar. So that was how I wrote my first book in terms of comparing the systems. And then after that, because of that, I went back to corporate in terms of training. That's why the creation of Trilogy People Performance Consultancy on utilizing this Asian personality profiling system to train people and team members, both on teamwork as well as leadership. And through this process, of course, I got to know Jennifer, and then she was then involved in part of my next book, which was the Effective Asian Leadership book itself, which was released in 2019. And then since then, I think I've been straddling both sides, both the corporate in terms of training as well as Chinese metaphysics. But I think I was sharing with Jennifer a little earlier on that because of whatever COVID brought, I think a lot of anguish, mental stress, and when I started sharing how to utilize some of the Chinese metaphysics formulas in terms of helping someone understand themselves a little better so that it makes their path ahead a little easier, I think that has actually shown a lot of pickup, especially from my YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I am thankful for the weekly updates that I receive through WhatsApp, the Batsy and the Feng Shui that you said. I'm also I'm really interested in personality tests. So I've taken, you name it, I've taken it. I've taken the core values index, I've taken the MBTI, also the Enneagram. And then when you introduced to me to Batsy, and then I found out that I am a Jawud, or so there are different personalities, right? So that's when I realized, okay, so this is why I am the way I am. So why I can be sometimes stubborn, especially when I feel that I am correct, and
Yeah.
even if I stand alone, doing what I think is right.
Correct. I think same like yourself. Before I actually went into the Chinese metaphysics study, I was going into many different types of Western profiling systems. I think as we go by, even within the Chinese metaphysics system of Bazi, there's also other systems where probably it gives you an insight as to who you are. But a lot of times, what happens is if you I shared a story on one of my YouTube videos where when we look at actually the picture of ourselves, sometimes we may be viewing it, or the different systems may be viewing it from a seven blind men perspective, right? So one system may be looking at the head, one system may be looking at the tail, one system will be looking at the legs. So I think if you are able to take a step back and piece together a few of the different perspectives, then it gives you a much better understanding, because after all, human beings are multifaceted. So it's not possible for one system to just see everything. Yeah. So I think in this process of discovering ourselves, if you take a step back and understand ourselves, then we would also understand like the topic we're discussing in this channel about diversity and inclusion, why different people behave differently. And because you take a step back, you're able to then understand where they are coming from and not be too upset on disagreements of your opinions, basically.
Yeah, we become more understanding of each other's differences, and we become
Yes,
more
that's right.
accepting.
Yes.
And that is actually the reason why we have these stories from the Fringe, because we aim this to be a platform wherein we push conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging from the Fringe to the front and center of the conversations. And we believe that by being more aware of our individual differences and become more accepting, we will be able to role model inclusive behaviors and in a way influence those around us, and also the youth and the children who will become the future leaders of our society. Yeah. So you've mentioned about Batsy having this impact on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So was that an intention on your part, or was it something like circumstantial that it became it works somewhere along the way, that it helped
Yeah.
in the DNIB space?
I think that's a good question. Remember I mentioned I started stepping into Chinese metaphysics more to explore myself, not necessarily thinking of it becoming my own business for the last 16 years. So what I found is, because I understood myself a little better, I understand that I can be, because I have been so successful as a corporate career woman, right? So I tend to be very focused and bossy, yeah. So and then you bring that same kind of characteristics back home, when then therefore you will bring about disharmony within the home and couple relationship issues. So I think by understanding this, because every one of our characteristics have both positive and negative perspectives. If we utilize it in the career perspective, of course it's going to do well because you persevere, you are determined. But when you're back at home, I think it can't be an overstrength, or we need to manage that such that you are aware that you do not overstep your boundary. So that's one. Two is, by utilizing this particular system, I've also understood my partner, my husband, my son a lot better. So it really helps in family communication and bonding. And that's where I utilize it a lot, besides corporate, for teamwork, team building, self-team awareness, but also for individual family members, couple relationships, how they can better understand each other and therefore have better communication and bonding.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are more apt to adapt and
Yes.
adapt.
Yes.
All right, so um, in the next 12 months, what are you thinking of building? What are you thinking of creating in relation to Chinese metaphysics?
In relation to Chinese metaphysics, I think what happened was, you asked me a question about entrepreneurship, generally talking about the questions that your viewers have and your followers had. So what I would like to share is, basically, in terms of Chinese metaphysics, you are moving into a period of a lot of instability. So the traditional route of going to school, getting a good degree, going to a good company, work for a long time, retire, and then enjoy your retirement. It's going to be gone, as can be seen during this COVID-19 crisis. Yeah, so the ability to adapt, to be agile, and also to have multiple streams of income is crucial. So therefore, one of the projects actually before I move on to the next 12 months is this year I launched a course called Build Resilience, create basically your multiple streams of income itself. So I think the producers will be sharing the link, and the entrepreneurship insights that you wanted me to share is drawn from a lot from the lessons of my past 16 years in business, plus also what I've observed, how entrepreneurs actually do well or don't do well. And one of the insights I think I would like to basically bring to viewers is from Richard Branson's quote, is launching your own business is actually one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things that you can do. However, it's also important to keep in mind that most businesses fail within 1.5 years of starting the business itself. So therefore, even though I mentioned it's good to create multiple streams of income, it's not about jumping straight in, quitting your job and losing that security and stability, but basically finding out what's your strength, what's your path in terms of what you like to do, in terms of starting the business before you are able to create the multiple streams of income, so that you are not impacted as we move along to this new era. Yeah.
See, so you mentioned about creating multiple streams of income. Can you provide at least 3 key steps on how people can start doing that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So one of the first things that you should be looking at is what we discussed a little earlier, understanding your personality type. So under the Asian personality profiling system, which I adapted from Bazi, is we have different kinds of orientation of people or approaches that people take. Some people are more action oriented. Some people are more analysis oriented. Some people are more process oriented or people oriented or idea oriented. So for instance, if you are a process oriented person, then even when you start a business, it is crucial that you understand you need to have frameworks. You therefore cannot just go ahead and do a startup without any outside references. So some of them may go into franchises, some of them may research models that has been successful. So understanding this part about yourself is crucial. Then the next part of this is, once you understand the kind of model or business type that you are comfortable with, is to then ask yourself the 5 W's and 1 H question. So what are these 5 W's and 1 H questions? So the first thing you should be asking is, who are your customers basically? Who are your customers? What problems are you solving for this group of customers? Why should they be buying from you? And therefore, where should they buy from you? And if you want to sell to them, how are you going to get your message out to them? Because by answering all these questions, it will give you an idea of the potential of the market. And therefore, you can then create a very simple 1-page business plan on how to do your objectives, your strategies, and at the same time, be looking at a financial model as to how long before you will break even, rather than plunging straight into starting off a business. That's the second point. And the third point that I think is very, very crucial is cash is king if you are a new startup. Why is this the case? Now, if you are in corporate for a long time, you have been managing a division or franchise, you may be put in charge of a profit and loss responsibility. But what you see in numbers in terms of the P&L, profit loss statement or balance sheet, are just figures on papers. When you start your own business, cash flow is king. Without cash flow, you cannot pay your staff's salary, you cannot pay yourself, you cannot pay for fixed expenses, and you cannot pay your suppliers. So that's one of the reasons why I think when the quote in Richard Branson's quote that I mentioned earlier on is a lot of the business failed within the first 1.5 years, not because their business idea did not work. It's because their cash flow ran out. So figuring out how to collect payments as fast as possible and negotiating credit terms with the suppliers would be crucial. So these are the 3 points I'd like to share. One, when you are starting out in your new business.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting these 3 things. They are really important. I agree. Number 1 is because we have to be customer centric. We have to have design thinking. We cannot
Yes.
have just bright idea and force people to buy it if they don't need it, if they don't want it. So we need the desirability, feasibility, and viability. And then second one is go where they are buying, right? So even if you have a very good product, you believe in it, but people are not even aware that there's such a product that this. So all your efforts will be futile. And the third one, cash is king, yes, especially now in these trying times that we are in. Really important things. All right. So I think we'll go for a short break, Janet, and then
Sure.
after that, we'll continue the conversation.
Sure.
All right. We are also inviting you to watch all other shows on TNC, whether live or through replay, such as U-Turn, TNC The Talk, Awesome Day, The Home Buyer, The Puppet Stories, Mondays at 5:30 p.m., The Big Picture, Mondays and Fridays, 7:15 p.m., The Millennial Voice, Mondays at 8:30 p.m., Foreign Affairs, HR Hotline, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 12 noon, and moving on, Business Well Home. Mental Shift, Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. USA, Wednesdays, 9:30 a.m. Philippines. Money and More, Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Philippines and 5:30 a.m. USA. Cybernext. Check out our page on Facebook, on YouTube by searching TNC Now. Enjoy these inspiring shows we made because they are made for you. And of course, please remember to catch my show, Stories from the Fringe, every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. 10:30 a.m. Philippine Standard Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if I'm not mistaken, 9:30 p.m. the previous day Central Time. All right. So shall we go? And we would like to also thank Ubuntu Game by Games to Unite Incorporated. We are co-creating a diversity board game aimed at eliminating racial stereotypes, racism, also misunderstandings and marginalization. And hopefully we'll be able to also create a more diverse, inclusive, equitable world for us all. So shall we invite Janet again? Hi, Janet.
Hi.
All right. So, would you like to touch some more about your book, the one that is behind you, Asian Leadership? That one is the one that I bought when you went here in Manila and attended the Other Summit.
Sure. So basically, in the book itself, I think I shared a little bit about why understanding the differences in terms of the background perspectives are critical, right? So one of the things when I was writing the book is really to understand why leaders are successful in Asia in the many different generations, what drove them. And I wanted to dive deep and understand a little bit better. So I didn't want to look at it from the perspective of what is the latest leadership style, latest leadership theory, but more really interviewing each and every one of the leaders as to what they felt helped in their successful journey. So what I asked them were more about what values actually influenced them to become who they are today, and whether these values actually change over a period of time. How has it influenced the way they lead and the kind of organizations that they join? And throughout this process, I learned tremendously. And one of the key things that kept being reinforced about diversity and inclusion is that we have to understand where people are coming from, where they are brought up, why someone in Philippines will communicate a lot differently versus someone from Singapore, for instance. So I remember interviewing a leader in Philippines who basically hates the division in terms of natural renewable energy. So he says that basically in Philippines, because of the history where there are many different empires that took over, from the Spanish to the Japanese, that at times you all are not so antagonistic in terms of the way you reply. You tend to agree. Now, from a Singaporean perspective, because I think we have been brought up where white is white, black is black, right? So at times we can be very direct. So therefore, even when we communicate, when I remember when we first started working in Johnson & Johnson, Singaporeans communicating to Malaysians or Indonesians, my colleagues from the other countries will tell me, I say, Janet, you're very different from other people. I say, why? They say you're less, how should I say, snobbish. I say, what do you mean by snobbish? It's like you don't cut us off. So I say, what do you mean? He say, because at times, and that's how I start to understand a lot more about the different cultures when I start to travel to the different countries to really understand why they say certain things. And we usually have to basically build that relationship and trust to dig a little bit deeper. And in this book itself, it's every single leader that I met actually said the same thing. So I then asked them this question, but if you want growth within the company, you therefore have to have people of diverse backgrounds. And because of these diverse backgrounds, they will have very passionate disagreements and arguments. Then how are you going to settle them? So they basically told me that at the end of the day, so long as there's a common objective. So to me, it's similar, whether it's a common objective for the organization, for the association, for the group, or even within your family. So long as there's a common objective, it's not how you achieve things or how things should be done, because different people will do it differently. It's basically just agreeing to disagree and then just move ahead to go where you want to go. So that's one of the biggest take that I have gotten when writing this Effective Asian Leadership book.
Lovely. Yeah, it's a very comprehensive book. You've interviewed, if I'm not mistaken, 100 leaders. So it took you how many years to do that?
I actually surprised myself for it. We interviewed more than 100 leaders across 17 countries in Asia, and I think I started interviewing in April 2018. We published the book in April 2019.
Wow. So it's really a labor of love.
It's something that I think whatever that we do, if we find enjoyment and passion, and as long as we learn along the journey, it's not so much the outcome. It's really about enjoying the process, because at the end of the day, even if you meet up with hiccups, obstacles itself, when you take a step back and reflect, most times there are great learnings and lessons. And that's what actually helped me push on to be able to finish the book and publish it by April in 1 year's time.
The reason why it sticks to me is because we have, please correct me if I'm wrong, most of the books that we have, business books, leadership books that we have, are from the West. And this is the first time that I've read about a leadership book about Asian leadership, specifically about Asian leadership. So that's the reason why it's very memorable, shall I say, memorable for me. And I'm learning a lot. Yeah, and also it reflects back also to something about Filipinos also. And that's, if I may share also, that's one of the observations that I have, what you have pointed out, that Filipinos are more agreeable. They tend to to be not confrontational if they can avoid it, which in my work in the corporate sometimes frustrates me. Like, can we not waste each other's time? Can we not beat around the bush? Can we just go straight to the point? Like, just if it's A to B, then let's just stick A to B. So let's not meander. So that frustrates me to the point, to no end. And I think that's also frustrating to people who I work with, because you've mentioned about a person who is process oriented. So I'm more of I have this personality of being a process oriented, like give me a framework and then just provide me the parameters, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, but give me what freedom, leeway on how can I achieve the outcome. And sometimes when I know that we are hitting a deadline, we have tight deadline, I tend to be someone who pushes people. Like, let's do this. I have no time for relationships. I even don't have time. So I think that made me, at least in a way, take a step back and appreciate myself and also appreciate the people that I work with.
Correct. I think that's when I do the team building exercise, where each and everyone discover the personality type they have. Then they realize, oh, that's the reason why you are this way. Because just now you mentioned you are born on the day of young wood, which is the image of a tree. So you're very direct and straightforward.
Yeah.
So one of the companies that I was doing this training for, it was quite interesting, because the supervisor approached me to do this training for them, because there's one of the things that was highlighted, that this particular person had some issues in terms of teamwork. And we realized that he was also a young wood. And because he's very passionate about the things that he wants to do, is not that he purposely wants to antagonize with others, it's just that he wants things to be done, but maybe the phrase was not correct. So that's one of the things. But what is also interesting, the fact that you mentioned that this is an effective Asian leadership book. I got invited precisely because of this by World Trade Organization to share on what are the values of Asia that can be so different from Western. And there was quite a bit of discussion when we were basically sharing the stories, because we invited a leader also from Philippines who was my ex-boss, and he shared about his journey in China when he was running the country for the Johnson & Johnson business itself, how he had to really understand the local customs and then adapt, but at the same time adhere to his principles, which is part of the company's principles as well. So I think at the end of the whole sharing itself, a lot of them basically said that whether you are an Asian or you're Western, it's always very good to really dig deep and understand what values really influence you. Because at the end of the day, whether you're happy or not happy, it's basically whether your work, what you believe in, even your business, whether are they in alignment with your values and principles. So that was one big conclusion actually after the sharing and the talk with World Trade Organization.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Um, so what are the I I saw this video about Simon Sinek, and he's of course known as a business guru, and he said that it's about time that we learn about Asian leadership, because if you will look at the history of Asia in the East, they have empires, all the businesses here, all conglomerates, they have stood years and years of operations. So what do you have to say about that?
I think the key thing is, if I were to look at Western and Asian leader, I think if you look at a leader who's actually from a Western culture trying to manage another country's company in another location within the European, I think the cultures are very similar. So therefore, they find it a lot easier to communicate and bring the team up. But if we look at Asia, there are multiple countries, and within one country itself, there are multiple languages. If you look at India, there are like 50 official languages, excluding all the dialects. If you look at China, it's the same. You look at Indonesia, you look at Philippines, there are many different islands. And one leader that I interviewed who is based in Indonesia, he says, if you go to another island in Indonesia and touch the person's head, they will feel that you are being disrespectful with them. So in order for a leader to be successful in Asia, it's basically like I touch on a little later on. It's not just really just understanding the different perspectives, but how this person grew up. What's the background? Did they go through war? Did they go through extreme trauma? That's why they say the things that they do. In order for the entire organization to move forward, you need to basically connect at a much deeper level versus that of a Western culture. And the thing is, if you look at a lot of the Western companies, be it, I think right now we have PepsiCo, we have many other multinational companies where the heads are a lot of them Indians. So if you look at the Indians' background, they have been brought up to basically be more upfront. They have to challenge their whoever that gives them a task. They debate a lot more. Therefore, it's a lot more in alignment with the Western culture, and that's why you see a lot more of them hating the Western companies. If you're looking at Asian companies, Asia is where most of the world's population is. So for anyone to want to succeed in Asia, or any company that wants to succeed in Asia, understanding the richness of the culture, understanding how to communicate and motivate people within the Asian culture, it's really critical. Because being successful in Singapore does not mean you'll be successful in Vietnam. Just take a look at the example of Uber and Grab. Uber took the model that was successful in the West, in the US, and plonk it into Asia, and they flopped. But Grab had basically people who are from the countries understanding each of their different cultures and therefore tweaking the product to suit the individual consumers. And that's why Grab is doing so well in the Southeast Asia region.
Yeah, I agree. Context is the key, right? And as a leader, you always have to be able to switch gears and adjust as needed. All right.
Yes.
So we go for our second break, and then When we come back, Janet will tell us more how she can be contacted, how we can continue with the conversation. Catch our other original shows live or replays such as Healthline Couple Goals Within, Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Stories from the Fringe, of course, Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Market Leader, TNC Express, YOLO, Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Negosyo at Home, Tech Q, TNC Marketplace, Fridays and Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. COVID Stories, Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. Realty Realities, Saturdays at 4 p.m. Danny Art Show, After Shift, Women at Work, The Family Business, Usapang Beauty, The Fourth Project. Catch also our TNC specials Monday, TNC Arena, TNC Prescon, and TNC Town Hall. On Saturday, 7 p.m., co-hosted by TNC founders Lloyd Luna and Apple's Planamanan Sala. Town Hall is also where we talk to you, our valued audience. More upcoming shows, follow hashtag TNC Now on Facebook and YouTube. Allow your passion to inspire you, and together, let us see the new you. Hi, Janet.
Hi.
So we're coming close to our conversation. Thank you again for being our guest for today.
You're most welcome.
Can you share with our viewers how they can follow you on social media, how they can know more about your work?
Sure. Currently, I'm releasing the weekly YouTube videos on my YouTube channel. I think we'll be sharing my link of the YouTube channel on the comment section. If not, you can also search under the name Janet Yong in YouTube. You will be able to find out more about what I'm sharing. And in my channel, basically, the weekly videos are either on feng shui, 八字, entrepreneurship, or personal growth in the areas of success, communication, and motivation. Then, of course, if you would like to find out about my work, what I do, the easiest website to go to is janetyong.com. There, it will link you to Trilogy People Performance Consultancy, as well as Eight Treasures, which is the Chinese metaphysics side, and Trilogy People Performance Consultancy is more on the training. And if you want to find out more about the book that we spoke in length about, it's actually effectiveasianleadership.com. This book is also available as an ebook on Amazon as well. So if you search Effective Asian Leadership, you should be able to get to the website. If not, on the website under the bookstore, you will also get to the Amazon link to get the book if you're interested in getting a copy.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested to get a copy once because they have heard about it. And you'll
Right.
learn a lot about Asian leadership, I assure you. Fantastic, Janet. So I hope we can see each other face to face after this COVID pandemic is done in the not too distant future.
Hope so too.
Dear viewers, if you've loved today's episode, kindly let us know in the comment section in a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. How do you find it? How do you find today's session? Okay, and if you haven't invited your friends yet, please invite them. Please tell them to also watch us next Thursday, August 19th, for the second episode of Stories from the Fringe. Okay. And with that, may you have a good rest of your day or evening, depending where you are in the world. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Jennifer.